Rigby's Roads, Chapter 20, The Gambler and the Bag of Death. Tuesday morning was no different than the previous mornings for Jack. He woke up again in the afternoon and felt like shit. He was too old for nightly partying, and it was his fourth night in a row of overindulging. Henry was still sleeping because there was no Mr. Pibb at Big Al's, so he drank beer like everyone else, and both glasses did their toll on him. After he showered and dressed, Jack went to the lobby to get a newspaper and saw Red standing outside, talking on her phone. She saw Jack and waved him outside while she continued to talk. He watched her pace back and forth, simply responding, "Yeah, I got it." She put the phone in her pocket and looked at Jack. "The meeting is set with Kang, tonight, at the Purple Poker Palace. And Wheels says not to say a word to anybody, including Hammer, because he doesn't want the FBI showing up and blowing this sit-down. Got it?" Sure. Did he say who else is going tonight or anything about the bag?" "Yeah. He said he had to cash in an old favor from his past to make this happen." Jack needed confirmation. "So there is a list of who is going tonight, and he did confirm the bag?" Red nodded. "Yes, to both. He said we would make a showing with a small number so as not to inflate the caution level. Sit-downs have rules, Jack, stating small groups only, so it will be me, you, Big Tony, and Wheels. Pinky's taking Hammer to the Billy Idol concert and to see the Miss Buffalo Chip contest. And Wheels told Kang to bring the bag." Jack was relieved. "Finally! Yes. That's great. What time's the meeting?" "Midnight." "Midnight? Why midnight?" "I didn't ask. When you're asking for a sit-down, it's always because there's something that's screwed up between two people. Sometimes it's personal, but almost always it's just business. The people at the sit-downs usually don't get along, but they realize a simple, civilized talk can fix most problems without bloodshed. But there's always one side that has an advantage, and the other side has to give up more than they are willing to, if they want to get the matter fixed. Jack, this isn't easy for Wheels. He and Kang had a big falling out years ago that he never talks about. So consider yourself lucky that this meeting is even taking place." "Oh, I had no idea. So what's the plan?" "Tonight you're riding with me, and don't forget to keep this quiet, okay? Now let's go eat some lunch. I'm starving." Jack left Henry a note. "Pinky will be picking you up. I'll be with Red. Catch you later." At lunch, Red tried to add some humor to the conversation, but she couldn't get through to Jack. She saw a blank expression on his face. She even flirted with him, and there was no response. He was off in his own world. His mind was spinning so fast that it took all of his energy. He was physically and mentally drained. Should I call the FBI? What was it that Jordan said? As soon as you have a time and a place for the meeting, call this number. The president is counting on you. Jack was thinking, bringing the FBI into this meeting could be a disaster if they were spotted. It would betray Wheel's good name and his trust among the biker community. If Patterson walked into that poker room, he would stand out like a nose picker at an etiquette convention. I can't take that chance. Red assured him, "Relax. Things will fall in place. You'll see. Try to think about something else." Jack did change the subject. "Did I ever tell you about Bonnie?" "No. Who is Bonnie?" Jack told Red about Bonnie and how she made an impact on him. Red listened intently, knowing that Jack's mind was no longer dwelling on his problems. After lunch, they rode downtown to the display. Jack sat in a corner next to the trailer, under the tent. He watched as people came into the display area, each with their own agenda. Some would come to admire the custom bikes, while others would come to claim their dreams by taking pictures of the custom bikes they would only own in photographs or in the still frames of their mind. Every once in a while, someone would come and squat down next to a bike and examine it real close. Their faces would be filled with wonderment, and sometimes they would shake their head knowingly, as if they solved a problem that had been bothering them for years. One of Wheel's sales team would approach the inquisitive customer and the questions would start flying. Is that a titanium crosspiece there? Why did you weld this mounting bracket at that angle? The sales staff knew which people were gawkers and which ones were potential customers. A gawker would sit on the bike without permission. The potential customer would always ask permission to sit, but it was always impossible to figure out who had the money to spend 50 grand on a custom motorcycle. Wheels pulled Jack aside.
We sold 7 bikes so far, almost 2 per day.
Jack nodded while staring out into the street. Wheels noticed that he was in a trance.
Jack, are you all right?
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm sorry I got you into this mess. This thing with you and Kang. Red told me you guys used to be friends and had a falling out or something. I'm sorry this is causing you to ask him for a favor. I understand how hard that was for you. I'm sorry, that's all. Wheels was now staring out into the street, distancing himself from the conversation, as if he had gone back in time to that fateful event that caused the rift between him and Kang. Wheels, still staring off into the distance, slowly reflected.
Sometimes in life you purposely choose a different road because it's the obvious one that you have to take to survive. It's a choice that goes against everything you believe in, and yet you know you need to go there. It's a wake-up call for the rest of your life, and if you don't answer it, you might not ever get a second chance.
Jack nodded, knowing that Wheels had made the right decision all those years ago, but at what price? You seem to have made the right choice. Wheels half smiled.
It was the wrong choice at the time, but it turned out to be the right choice for the future. I was lucky. The choice that I made that night years ago was selfish. It went against all of my principles, against everything I believed in. And yet, I took a chance, and it was the most important event of my lifetime. At a time like that, you weigh all your decisions for only that point in time. That's dangerous. You need to look at it as if you're 75 years old and you are looking back on your life. What if I did this or that instead?
Jack watched Wheels drift off into his daydream of the past. Thanks, Jack offered.
What for?
Thanks for going down this road for me. I know it's not easy. I wish I could repay you somehow.
You already have, Jack. You already have.
Jack was falling back into his hole of despair, adding up all his problems. He remembered how Red had helped him change the subject, letting him talk about Bonnie. He decided to try it again. Wheels, did I ever tell you about Bonnie?
No. Who is she?
Jack put a brief smile on his face and retraced the Bonnie story for Wheels. After about 10 minutes, he looked at his watch. It was 3 o'clock. 9 more hours to go. Damn. Wheels glanced at Jack.
Why don't you go back to the hotel and get some rest? It will help you keep your mind off things.
I can't rest. I just woke up.
Well, go for a ride or something, will you?
Jack grinned. Fine, I get the picture. I'll get out of your hair. See you later. Jack rode off with no destination in mind. He needed to escape and be out on his own. He turned off the main highway and took some country roads that meandered through the Black Hills. It felt good to temporarily escape. He wished Bonnie was with him, holding him tightly from behind. He rode almost 4 hours before making his way back to the hotel. His stomach felt queasy. He wasn't hungry, but the long ride had made him tired. Henry had already left with Pinky to go to the campground for their night out. As he lay on the bed in his room, his mind drifted back to who he used to be and who he was now. The old Jack was dead, and a new one had taken his place. But he realized he was still making decisions as the old Jack, unable to shake the shadows of his inner self. Staring at the ceiling, he promised himself, after tonight, I'm going back to my life, but with a different mindset. I need some guidance to make some necessary changes, and maybe my list of 50 things would be a great start. I need to start taking chances on my own, going down new roads that I choose, not the ones that lead to familiar repetition. He started thinking about Bonnie and how she woke up a part of him that he thought he would never feel again. She gave him a purpose for living, a sense of excitement. How far could he take the relationship? He certainly had impressed her with his charm and sense of compassion, but would she be willing to go to the next step? Was he willing to go to the next step? He remembered what Wheels had said earlier about being 75 years old and looking back on your life. Now if he had the slightest possible chance of getting more intimate with Barney, how could he let that slip away? The what-ifs would haunt him for years. This wasn't about if it was right or wrong. Yes, there was an age difference. There would be no commitment to marriage. It was an opportunity to experience something personal that would become a treasured memory that would be with him forever. Something he could always look back on when he was old and remember with a smile. How could he pass that up? Jack sat up. He had fallen asleep. He opened the door. It was red. "It's 10:30. Are you ready?" He looked at his watch. 10:30? Can you give me a few minutes? "I'll give you 30 minutes, but we have to leave here no later than 11. Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I fell asleep, that's all. I'm going to take a quick shower to wake up." "All right. I'll be back at 11. Wheels and Big Tony joined them as they rode to the Purple Poker Palace in Deadwood. It was cold, but Jack had on his leather jacket. His arms were around Red, and he held on to her tightly. His grasp around her waist was more like he was hugging her to obtain a sense of comfort, assurance, and protection. Now he understood what Bonnie meant about the hug. But something didn't feel right about this night. He didn't like the fact that only 4 of them would be at this sit-down, and he was scared. As they entered the front door of the Purple Poker Palace, the cigar smoke was thick, giving the room the appearance of an early morning fog. The walls and tables were gaudy purple. Jack looked around the room and recognized some of the riders that rode up with them from Wheel's store, and he felt a little better. He nodded at some of them as they made eye contact, but they did not respond, concealing their presence from others. In the far back corner of the room, at a large round table, Kang was playing poker with his club members, the Boss Stones. In front of their table were 2 other tables, filled with Kang's men that blocked easy access to Kang himself. Kang had a strategic setup as a line of defense in case of an unexpected uprising. Jack's thoughts of being outnumbered crossed his mind again, and he guessed the sit-down rules weren't going to be observed tonight. The bag was on the back of Kang's chair and was visible because the immediate wall behind him propped it up to the side for viewing. Jack cautiously made his way to the back of the room. Red made her way to the bar as she recognized an old friend. Big Tony sat down at a nearby table with his eyes focused on Wheels and the surrounding area. Jack was now standing alone, looking at Kang, when Wheels kicked out an empty chair and ordered,
"Sit down. I'll get this started."
Jack humbly obliged. Wheels approached the 2 tables that acted as a blockade to the corner. Kang called out, "Scarson, check him out." A giant barbarian with a big scar across his face stood up. His scar started from his chin and continued up his face until it disappeared under a black eye patch. Wheels had crossed paths with him before. His real name was Jeff Carson, but they tweaked his name to Scarson because of the gash across his face. He was Kang's chief of security, and he handled all his dirty work. Scarson told Wheels to slowly lift his jacket as he looked for a sign of any weapons. After a thorough pat-down, he cleared him to continue his walk closer to Kang's table. A biker, sitting in front of Kang, stood up and gave Wheels his seat. The tension was thick, but understandable, as they both nodded to each other respectfully. Kang started, Wheels. How have you been, my old friend?"
"Good, Kang. How about yourself?"
"Not bad. Can't complain. How's Billy?" Kang inquired with a smart-ass sneer on his face. Wheels took the insult without batting an eye. He knew that Kang had heard about Billy, and this was his way of rubbing salt into an old wound.
"Billy's gone to the big highway in the sky."
"Oh, yeah. I think I remember hearing something about that. Killed a cop, didn't he? Wheels snapped back.
Self-defense.
Wheels was going to ask about Kang's old girlfriend, who took the fall for him in a DEA raid over a decade ago, but he decided not to throw more fuel on the fire. Kang continued, "So what's your interest in my birthday present?" He pointed to the bag on the back of his chair.
Birthday present? Look, Kang, that bag was stolen from a bike 3 days ago in Colorado, and you know that. At the same gas station that you guys stopped at on your trip out here.
Kang asked, "Whose bike? And why isn't that guy here asking about it?"
Because it's,
Wheels was going to say mine, but he didn't want to give Kang an edge over their already volatile relationship.
It belongs to a friend of mine. He's here with me, and he asked me for a personal favor to get it back. That's all.
Does this friend of yours have a name, or are you making this up like you did in 91? Wheels looked distraught. He didn't want to bring up that incident from 1991, especially since it was his doing that allowed him to go free that night, while Kang got arrested and went to prison for 18 months. Going down that rat hole would not help this sit-down come to a successful conclusion.
His name is Doc, and he saved my life. I owe him this favor. It's a private payback that I have to do.
Kang continued his teasing. Really? Getting sentimental in your old age? Let's see how real this fairy tale is. Kang stood up and shouted, "Is there a doctor in the house?" His gang around him laughed. Jack looked at Wheels, then at Big Tony, then back to Wheels again for a sign. Wheels nodded his head slightly, and the rest of it was up to Jack. He slowly stood up and faced the corner table. He had never been more frightened in his life, but he had to speak up and prove himself that he had changed. This was a turning point and the final test for all the things that he recently experienced. "I'm Doc, and I'd like to get my bag back, please." The crowd looked at him and laughed again. "Well, Doc, come over here. Let's hear what you have to say," Kang announced so the whole room could hear. As he walked towards the corner, Scarson put his foot across the top of the table, blocking his path. Scarson slowly stood up. "Just a minute there, Doc. Let's make sure you ain't carrying any surprises." He was the scariest biker Jack had seen all week. He searched him with more of a hands-on approach than he did for Wheels, grabbing his balls and doing everything he could to make him feel uncomfortable. All the time he was being handled, Jack stared straight ahead at Kang, not looking away. It was eye-to-eye contact with a forced, determined look, while he was really shaking inside. "He's clean." The human security gate opened up and allowed him to pass. The biker next to Kang started to get up, but Kang put his hand on his shoulder and kept him in the chair. He pointed across the table to another biker, who stood up, giving Jack the seat across from Kang, next to Wheels. Kang was being cautious, not surrendering the chairs on both sides of him to the enemy. "So, Doc, can you describe this bag of yours?" Kang questioned him with an outrageous grin. The crowd, enjoying the confrontation, laughed again. Jack had an annoying look on his face, realizing he was going to be played to the crowd's enjoyment just to spite Wheels. "That's it, hanging on your chair," Jack pointed. "That's not what I asked you," Kang said in a serious tone. "I told you to describe it." Jack took a deep breath and was getting agitated by this verbal attack that was unfolding. "Okay, it's a black canvas bag with orange trim and a zippered top. It has detailed artwork painted on the side of it depicting a kangaroo riding a Harley." "Well, now, wait a minute." Kang attempted to deride Jack. "Hey, Scarson, can you describe the bag?" Scarson put his hand over his eye without the patch, peeked between his fingers, and bragged, "Hell, I can do it blindfolded. It's a black canvas bag with orange trim and a zippered top and has a painting of a kangaroo on a Harley." Kang declared, "Looks like we have a tie," and his entourage laughed again. Jack turned towards Scarson and snapped back. "There's a tattoo on the kangaroo's arm. What is it?" Scarson replied, "Fuck if I know." causing the room to laugh once more. Jack turned back towards Kang. I'll bet you don't even know what it is. I don't have to know, Doc. It's my bag, Jack asserted defiantly. There's 3 letters on the kangaroo's arm. Kang snapped back. And if you know so much, tell me, what do those letters stand for? Jack raised his voice in anger. Go fuck yourself. The entire room went silent, and all eyes turned to Jack. Scarson stood up, and Big Tony matched his move and stepped closer to the table, prepared for a battle of the giants. Kang raised his hand to stop the escalation and looked at him. Doc, you're going to need another doctor and a few nurses to wake you up out of your coma. Would you like to rephrase that last response? Jack smiled rebelliously and gave a slow and deliberate response. There are 3 letters on the kangaroo's arm, G, F, and Y. They stand for Go Fuck Yourself. There was a quiet, nervous laugh amongst the room that slowly turned into a roaring laughter. Kang pulled the bag from behind the chair and examined it. Yup, GFY. There they are. Big deal. Now what? Tell me why I should give you my bag. Jack was out of made-up answers. He was slowly going from someone being made fun of to someone who was getting pissed off. It no longer mattered to him that he could get beaten to hell. If he could only grab that bag and make it to the door, he might be able to escape. With a new attitude and manner about himself, he offered confidently, How about we play one hand of poker? Winner takes the bag. No questions asked. Kang smiled and stared at him. You don't look much like a gambler to me. From the front of the room, a man called out, Show him, Doc. Jack turned to see Scud sitting at a table on the other side of the room. Scud nodded, and the whole table nodded at the same time. Jack smiled, knowing he now had backup. A whole table of FBI was ready to take the bag away. He straightened his posture, put his thumbs in his front pockets, and provoked Kang defiantly. What's the matter, Kang? Are you chicken? The room collectively moaned and waited for Kang's next words. Chicken, huh? Well, how about we raise the stakes a little bit, Mr. Big Mouth? If I win, I keep the bag and break both your arms. If you win, you can have the bag if you also pay me $1,000. Everyone recognized it was a no-win situation. It was going to cost Jack either way. Kang had called his bluff. Big Tony and Wheels both had an expression of, What the hell are you doing? But Jack knew that he was on his own road of his own choosing. He felt cocky, knowing that if he lost, the FBI would jump in before his arms were broken. He really had nothing to lose, and boasted, Okay, you're on. The room buzzed with excitement as they watched Mild Jack stand up to the biker scum who was going to break his arms. Kang looked startled. He didn't think Jack would be so brave, or so stupid. He started thinking about his own reputation and how the room was waiting to see how the hand played out. In Kang's mind, it was past the point of backing out of the deal that he had broadcast to the room. If he won, he would have to break Jack's arms. It was now a matter of honor to him. The crowd left their seats and approached the edge of the 2 guarded tables. Kang pushed everything on the table to the side with his arm to make room for the one hand of poker. He stared at Jack with a mean, intimidating look. Jack looked confident and showed a slight smile on his face, knowing the FBI was his ace in the hole. Kang sensed something was not right, and he was pissed. How could this little twerp be so confident about not getting his arms broken? It made Kang uneasy as he looked at the eager faces of the crowd who were anticipating a hand of poker that would become a story to tell for years to come. Suddenly, Kang started to smile. He reached behind him, grabbed the infamous bag, and placed it in the middle of the table, putting up his side of the stakes. Okay, Big Mouth, now it's your turn. Put up your money. Jack was confused. What money? $1,000. It's your side of the bet that you agreed to. Kang smiled, showing his teeth. Jack looked up, and the crowd nodded their heads, acknowledging that Kang was right for stating that fact. Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out $155.18. Kang smiled, knowing he had found a way to stop this event from becoming a folklore. An unidentified hand made its way through the crowd and tossed a wad of money on the table.
Here's $31.
It was Henry. Jack was surprised. How the hell did he get here? Pinky, who was standing next to Henry, also reached out and dropped his money on the table. And I've got $147. The excited room exchanged chatter, filled with talk about this sudden change of support. The crowd around the table was being pushed aside as Scud made his way to the front. Here's $700. Now you're over $1,000. The crowd giggled slightly, and Kang grew visibly annoyed. He realized the balance of the room was shifting toward the underdog, and they wanted this show to go on. Kang stared at Scud contemptuously and tried to remember if their paths had crossed in the past. Scud stared back at Kang with an equally mean look. He shifted his glance toward Jack, gave him a big smile, then returned his hard, cold stare back at Kang. Jack was amused that the FBI boys wanted him to play out the hand. They could have stepped in right then, flashed their IDs, and taken the bag, but they were using him for the possible entertainment value that he would win and put Kang to shame. Kang reached across the table as he gathered the cards and pulled them in to where he was sitting. He started to shuffle the cards. Wheels interrupted his shuffling.
Wait a minute. You're not going to deal. That wouldn't be fair.
I sure ain't going to let you deal, Kang shot back defiantly.
Well, how about someone neutral?
Wheels shouted loudly, trying to get the crowd to agree. Kang could hear the crowd start to agree, but quickly butted in. Fuck off. It's my bag, my card game, my deal. Wheels was pissed, but Jack remained calm and actually smiled because he knew the FBI was going to take the bag whether he won or not. Wheels was probably not aware that there were more FBI besides Scud standing around the tables. With a confident wave of his hand, Jack stated, "It's all right, Wheels. The bag's already in my hands. He just doesn't know it yet." Kang stared at him. "I'm going to break both your arms." Kang took inventory of the crowd around him as he continued to shuffle the cards, adding up the faces that he knew from those he didn't. 5-card draw, nothing wild. He offered the deck to Wheels. "Cut?" Wheels was surprised by the offer and cut the deck in half. All eyes were watching Kang's hands as he dealt the cards. Kang's eyes were on everybody else's eyes, watching him deal. If he was going to cheat, he'd have to be damn good to avoid getting caught while the whole room was watching him. Jack picked up his cards and held them close to his chest. He fanned them open slowly and saw the Queen of Spades, Queen of Diamonds, 6 of Diamonds, 8 of Clubs, and 2 of Diamonds. He glanced over at Kang, who was arranging his cards, and showed no emotion. Jack kept the 2 queens and threw down the other cards. "I'll take 3. Kang responded. "Have a pair or something there, Doc?" Jack tried to put on a poker face, but he cracked a smile, knowing his hand didn't matter, and the FBI would be showing their hand within minutes. Kang dealt him 3 cards. "And I'll take 2, he stated arrogantly. Kang added the cards to his hand and reshuffled them before checking his new additions. Jack fanned open his hand slowly. The 9 of Hearts, King of Diamonds, 4 of Spades. No help. He was stuck with a pair of queens, but he had the winning hand anyway. The FBI. Kang boldly announced, "All right, let's see what you got." Kang laid down his hand and bragged, "Full house, 3 queens and pair of 5s. Jack was startled, laid down his hand and argued, "Well, that's interesting, because I have a pair of queens. What kind of deck has 5 queens?"
A cheating deck,
someone yelled out from the front of the room. "That son of a bitch is cheating!" The crowd turned to see Gunner and the DTs come storming toward the table. With his finger pointing at Kang, Gunner screamed, "And you stole my bike tonight, didn't you, you son of a bitch? I thought we had a deal." While Gunner marched closer, the crowd parted as they saw the anger in his eyes. Gunner's arm rose from his side. A gun now replaced his pointing finger. The once smiling crowd now shifted into fear as they pushed their way out of the target area, knocking over people and chairs. The entire room panicked, except for Scarson, who stood up as a roadblock to Gunner's path. Scarson went for his gun, but a chair came crashing over his head from the side and sent him down to the floor, leaving the path to Kang wide open. Gunner cocked his gun and fired at Kang, hitting him in the left shoulder. Kang fell back on the floor and pulled out his own gun and fired back, hitting Gunner dead center in the stomach as he crumpled over in pain. Wheels dove to the floor and was now seeking shelter behind an overturned table. Jack got caught in the rush of the crowd and was knocked backwards in his chair. He found himself staring up at the ceiling while pandemonium reigned among the diverse sides. Wheels reached around the overturned table and pulled Jack back behind the quickly made shelter. More shots rang out. The FBI took cover as their efforts to identify themselves were fruitless due to the commotion of the scattering crowd and flying chairs. As quickly as the shooting started, it stopped. The few with guns had shot each other and disabled the gunplay. The FBI rushed towards each fallen gunman, trying to confiscate the weapons. But the fighting escalated as the DTs and the Boss Stones were determined to finish the fight, using brass knuckles, chairs, and anything they could get their hands on. From the corner of the room, crawling between the battling bikers, Henry had made his way to the bag, now sitting on the floor. He pulled it into his arms for safety, then wormed his way along the floor, around the fallen tables and chairs, avoiding the fighting men and aiming toward the front door. From behind the table, a gun inched its way towards Jack's head as he was unaware of the pending doom. As the shadow of the creeping gun became known to him, he turned his head, only to hear a tremendous blast inches from his face as his body reacted, jerking him against the overturned table. It was an explosion that had stopped his heart and replaced his hearing with a muffled hush. He felt for blood, but there was none. He gradually turned to see Wheels clutching his chest, slowly tilting and falling over from his crouching position onto the floor. Jack screamed, "Wheels!" Then he turned to Kang, who was now pointing the gun at him from behind the table. Kang, grimacing in pain, screamed at Jack, "You miserable piece of shit! It's all your fault!" As he cocked the gun, Kang noticed someone getting up from the floor. It was Henry, who snatched the bag in the confusion and was running toward the front door. Kang yelled at Jack, "You and that fucking bag! If I can't have it, no one will!" Kang turned towards Henry and fired, hitting him directly in his back. Henry shrieked in pain and fell face first onto the ground, smothering the bag. Jack watched that moment in shock as it appeared in slow motion. He screamed, "No!" Jack rushed toward Kang, but before he could get 1 inch closer, 2 FBI agents finished Kang off, firing shots into his body until he slumped over and died. The FBI announced their presence again and tried to take control of the remaining fights. Bones were broken. Men were moaning, screaming, and cursing in pain. Jack turned back towards Wheels, who was still slumped over on the floor. As he approached Wheels, Jack could see a streaking shadow rushing toward his head. A chair hit him with such force across the side of his head that it knocked him out cold. End chapter 20.